Are you looking for a new whiskey adventure? Then climb in and buckle up. Get ready for one hell of a ride on the Whiskey Trip podcast with your host, Big Chief. Join in as he and his guests explore whiskey and dive into whiskey stories from around the world. Now here's your host, Big Chief.
Hey, it's old Big Chief, and yeah, you're taking another ride on a whiskey trip. And yeah, listeners, we're with another distillery this week, and I'm pretty damn excited about it. You know, the history of whiskey in Pennsylvania is not just rich, it's a foundational of the entire American whiskey tradition. This is a story steeped in rebellion, rye, and resilience. So let's take a little ride and talk about Pennsylvania whiskey through time. Pennsylvania's whiskey story begins with European immigrants, especially the Scotch, Irish, Germans, and Welsh. Yes, I said Welsh. Now, they're not known for their distilling in Wales, but they do have a history of it. They're more known for beer, but when the Welsh came to the U.S., to America, they started dabbling in distilling a little bit. And they settled in the Appalachian foothills. These settlers brought their distilling knowledge and quickly adapted to local crops, particularly rye, which grew better than corn in the Pennsylvania's cooler climate and rocky soil, as we all know. They built small pot stills on farms to utilize their leftover grains, producing what come to be known today as Monongahela Rye, a bold, spicy, and dry whiskey named after the Monongahela River Valley. By the late 1700s, Pennsylvania was producing more whiskey than any other state. That is true. More than that state to the west, Kentucky. Just think about that. How much whiskey Kentucky is known for, but the rye whiskey, it came from the Keystone State, and rye was king. So we're going to get into that with my guest today, and hopefully I don't murder this. He's got an amazing name, Maximilian, and I hope I didn't say that wrong, Max Merrill. He's from Ponfeigh Distillery up in Somerset, Pennsylvania. Yes, not Somerset, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, folks. And we're going to talk about his rye whiskey. And I just so happen I got a glass right there. Cheers. Filled up with his 90 proof straight rye whiskey from Monongahela, 95.5. Did I get all that right, Max?
Yes, but unfortunately, I have to correct you on your pronunciation.
Oh, man, I knew it.
And
How do you say it?
You're not the only one, so it's all good. And I'm sure if you're not from this area, you wouldn't know. It's Monongahela.
Well, I should be able to say it right. It's just my hill country twang, I guess.
I know. Monongahela. You got
Monongahela.
I know your twang wants to cut syllables. You got to put an extra syllable in there. Monongahela.
Yeah, and I'm very familiar with the Monongahela River there in the valley because it pours into the Ohio River there in Pittsburgh, and working in the Coast Guard and cases throughout they call it the Ohio Valley region there.
Yep.
Sector Ohio Valley for the Coast Guard. I would work cases and breakaway barges full of corn and coal, and that's what that region is known for. And the Welsh are known for coal mining, and what other region do they go to, right? West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and they start mining coals. And that's how your family got to the Pennsylvania region, right?
Correct. They moved here in the late 1800s to chase the coal as well.
Now let's talk about the name. Did I say the name of the whiskey right? Ponfeigh?
You did. So, like you said, people emigrated to this region, and my family wasn't here till the late 1800s. But I'll take that. I'll take those dates. I mean, it's still early in American history, and when my great grandfather, I think that I'm doing enough greats. If there might be one more great, was sick. My great grandfather had to start making money for the family, and when he was 13 years old, he started his first lumber company, and it sort of took off from there. And one of the businesses that he wanted to start was a Shire farm, a dairy farm. And when he bought this piece of property, they were bringing a barn over the mountain into this valley, And they had what we thought was a Welsh immigrant, might have been a Scottish immigrant, that either or. When he came into that fertile valley, he screamed Ponfeigh. Now, for 90 years, we thought that meant wonderful, beautiful, amazing. Therefore, he used it in his speech. He used it for his other company names. And lo and behold, the internet comes out. And we realized that Mr. McDowell, who he knew the whole time, always worked with him, he was either a Welsh immigrant that lived in Scotland, or he was a Scottish immigrant that lived in Scotland, and he was from Ponfeigh, Scotland. And when he saw that fertile green valley, he was elated, and it reminded him of his home place, and that's why he screamed Ponfeigh. And what it means in Scottish is stag's watering place. So on the edge of the Ponfeigh farm, there's an old hunting cabin that my family has enjoyed the spirits and whiskey culture for over 90 years, and we had been living the code of Ponfeigh without even knowing it.
Yeah, even yesterday you were living it. You're out there trying to catch the American stag, which is the American whitetail, and putting out deer stands like I am, because it is summertime, or getting into summer, and we're starting to think about hunting season and putting out deer stands and stuff. But
Correct.
talking about, the name, there's all kinds of stags in Stag Junior, Stag whiskey from Buffalo Trace and stuff. So that's kind of fitting, in that rye whiskey kind of has that name tied into it.
I believe the Scottish Glenmorangie, or however you pronounce that, I think that means stag's watering place too.
Does it really?
Some other in Scottish as well, or something like that. Yeah, we have a lot of, like you said, Irish, Welsh, and Scottish roots here, and that's one reason why this part of Pennsylvania grew into rye production and became one of the hotbeds, if not one of the focal points of American whiskey culture. I always tell people when I'm doing our tours and discussing rye production and rye whiskey production here, they don't really grasp it. And I said, okay, we had 15 major distilleries in Somerset County before Prohibition. If we had 15 toy manufacturer plants in Somerset County right now, what would the whole world know Somerset County for?
That's what they would know for, toys.
Exactly. So the whole world knew about Somerset County whiskey production, so much so that actually a rich entrepreneur out of Baltimore, Mr. Walters, bought 4 of our distilleries before Prohibition, and was just pulling barrels down into Baltimore to bottle it, because he knew it was the best whiskey that he could acquire for his brand.
Well, even though George Washington knew that there was good whiskey there and people were making money for it, right? And I've talked about that in some past episodes with actually Pennsylvania distilleries, probably some friends of yours. And I've talked about the Whiskey Rebellion and the history that he's the only president ever to ride into battle and try to squeeze money out of these farmers, out of these distillers and stuff. And the history there is just amazing and stuff. And that the distillers there actually tarred and feathered tax collectors back in the day. And I'm just amazed that you are trying to resurrect this history and stuff. What made you want to start a distillery, and when did you bring your distillery into business?
Well, let me comment on 2 things, especially the whiskey heritage here, and then I'll tell you why I got into it. You talked about Alexander Hamilton and George Washington learning about the whiskey production, and therefore wanting to establish, basically revenue stream from the taxes here. And our production wasn't for commercialization. Our production was for barter. We were part of the nation that did not have paper or coin. So the Whiskey Rebellion wasn't about Americans not wanting to pay the tax. It was about Americans not being able to pay the tax. Remember, Somerset County, Westmoreland County, and Fayette County was the gateway to the West. We were all subsistence. The eastern towns and cities had paper and coin. We did not have paper and coin. So when George Washington and Alexander Hamilton and all the tax collectors heard about the whiskey production, they assumed that if they came out here, they would collect the tax and it would be fine. But it wasn't fine. They came to those farm distillers, they saw their 5-gallon or 20-gallon pot still, and they said, you owe me this much paper and coin because you can do this much production 365 days a year. They said, I don't do production 365 days a year, and I don't have paper coin. I literally use this gallon of White Dog, white rye whiskey, as you know it, as it was in colonial times, and I trade it for tools. I trade it for seed. I trade it for an axe. Well, they said, well, if you don't give me paper and coin, I have to take your still. And then they said, over my dead body. And you would do the same thing because you're destroying your way of life. That is the only means of survival. And therefore, it wasn't about currency. It wasn't about revenue. It was about their way of life. And even though it was the original insurrection, it was about the Easterners not respecting our way of life and understanding it. Alexander Hamilton could have given us a waiver, but he saw that as a means to establish federal rule and to put his thumb on our citizens. So, we talk about why did I get into distilling, and why, because of this history that I grew up learning. It was about the tax, and it was way more than that. Obviously, history is always nuance. Growing up at the Ponfeigh Historic Cabin, learning about Monongahela Rye, learning about different types of whiskeys, I would venture out to different distilleries all over the world. And when I would meet people like Russell or Bill from Maker's Mark or Corky from Peerless, they would all look at me like I had two heads, and like, why aren't you starting a distillery in the birthplace of American spirits, right? Where it all started, where a lot of the lore started, where most of their master distillers came from. And as I got into it more and more after 25 years of just learning more of the history and then finding each location of all of our distilleries in Somerset County, like I tell people on the tours, I've been studying it for 25 years. I finished my business plan 15 years ago, and I quit my lobbying job 6 years ago, and here we are today.
Well, I was going to say that, I don't know, I got like 3 rules, right? I don't talk about politics or religion or social issues on my podcast, but I would say the politicians of old are just like the politicians of today. They really don't understand the common man and what their businesses really have to do. They've got so much money that they don't live like normal people. And understanding that even today, craft distillers aren't making millions of dollars. They're just a business, and they're trying to make a living or scratch a living out of some grain and some water and some barrels. And all those things cost a lot of money to put it into there. And trust me, every time I see those stories, I think, man, greed and our politicians are what put us American to debt, and then they look to the farmers to get us out of debt back then. It's almost like today.
Yeah. Unfortunately, George Washington pardoned everybody, including the 2 people that were arrested from Somerset County, Harmon Husband and Robert Filson. Robert Filson is my great-great-grand uncle, so I have some lineage there. They were the 2 instigators in Somerset County that helped the Whiskey Rebellion start in Berlin and march westward to Washington, who you've talked with our friends, the Huffs, and then they marched northern to Pittsburgh. Tar and feathering everybody along the way, like you said. Ouch!
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of people didn't think they would do something like that. Now, I'm sipping on this 95.5 right here. This, I'm going to mess it up, Monongahela Rye.
Yes.
And tell me about this. Tell me, Do you guys got a column still?
We do.
And you're using a doubler too
Yes,
to produce this?
Yes, so all of our rye is sourced locally. We work with a wonderful gentleman, Mr. Doug Show. We're also making not only a Monongahela Rye, but a Maryland Rye, which is 60-30-10. And that was more of our friends in the East and the South that did that. But we're tipping our hat to a little corn infusion. But traditionally, Monongahela Rye did not have any corn in it. And it's because of the terroir of our soils, because the way the rye grows in our area, it makes a much sweeter rye. Every time, people come into our establishment or at festivals or whiskey tastings, a lot of folks say, "Oh, I don't like rye. It's too spicy," or "It's too harsh." And I'm like, "I got you." And if you notice, have you poured any of our cask strength as well?
I haven't yet. That's going to be the second half. We're going to dive into that.
Good. Our cask strength even shows the sweetness to it even more. And this is why. So barrels are like children. They don't age exactly the same, and they don't have the same characteristics, and they don't act the same age. Even though I made these barrels 4.5 years ago with my mentor, Pete Barger, they're not exactly the same. So I have very, very oaky ones, and I have a lot of sweet ones. So the ones that are oaky, I turn into my 90 proof, because proofing it down, like you're trying right now, proofing it down tones down that oaky flavor and brings the sweetness out just a little bit. And it's a very smooth, 90 proof whiskey that can obviously drink straight, and it creates this little separate profile than our cask strength. Our cask strength is what we just got a double platinum for. Mr. Fred Minnick, in his videos would say, almost like lost his lunch when he tried it on air for the first time, saying it was one of his favorite ryes ever. It is a super sweet, complex, 120 proof that, if you're not careful, we're both deer camp guys, it'll screw up a deer camp real quick because they don't know it's 120 proof. They will not make it to their deer stand in the morning, I'm telling you that. But it is a super sweet rye, and we believe not only historically why our ryes became so famous, but now that they are becoming just as famous, it's because of the sweetness. Just like your grapes in arid regions, just like your apples during a drought, our ryes are so stressed because our soils are thin and acidic. That terroir, that stress on that fruit gives it a much sweeter profile than we're all used to of the Midwestern ryes.
Yeah, I think that's what makes this beautiful, and that's why I always tell people, try whiskeys from around the world, from different regions. In the United States, don't just say, I'm just going to drink whiskey from Kentucky. Try it from Pennsylvania. Try it from Texas. Especially people that are sourcing their grains from there in that state, you're going to notice this giant difference from a Texas rye.
Texas ryes are totally different, and I
yeah.
love them. They're totally different than Midwestern ryes, and they've got, I believe, I forget what strain they're using. They're all focusing on a certain strain, and that is becoming their wheelhouse, and I think it's awesome. Our ryes, we only source from the Monongahela River Basin, and we will always source from that basin because we're sticking true to our roots.
I love that. I think that's great. Now, what made you go from a column still instead of a pot still? Why didn't you choose that traditional route instead of going to the column still?
Well, whiskeys, get better with time, and I believe the column still makes a cleaner, more palatable, more focused, more refined spirit. I've worked on both, and I just know what I'm trying to do, as in I remove every bit of heads off our distillate before it even enters the barrel. I want that sweetness to be able to come out, and I just want no mistakes there. And our column still makes such a beautiful white dog or rye dog or whatever we want to call it. It makes such a sweet whiskey that, after 3 years, even after two years, it's drinkable to the average whiskey drinker. But after 3 to 4 to 5 years, it is just a beautiful spirit. And I equate that to the way the column can separate the heads from the hearts.
I think it's a beautiful whiskey. I get that almost a chewing gum note off of this and stuff. And when I think of, there's a bark gum back in the day, like old school gum I think of, and it has just this little bit of bite to it.
Is it the clove?
Maybe I do get a little bit of clove on this and stuff. But old school chewing gums with this, a little bit of that licorice that we're all looking for in a beautiful rye and stuff. But I always think this has got more of a softer approach than those heavy Kentucky ryes that you're talking about.
Yeah,
that
it's
have
totally different. It's totally
burst
different.
of spice.
I mean, I love Kentucky for saving rye spirits, because they did. I mean, when Pennsylvania lost, 99% of their distilleries due to Prohibition, if it wasn't for Kentucky continuing to make it, nobody would even know that it existed, and we'd be starting at ground zero. But fortunately, the legislature in Pennsylvania saw the opportunity to return distilleries to Pennsylvania, made the legislation a lot easier for everybody to get a license and to get into the state arena. And we're seeing a resurgence of distilleries in Pennsylvania that is wonderful.
Now, I hear you got a rather large distillery, and it's the largest distillery in the state of Pennsylvania right now.
Correct.
Is that correct?
It is correct. We have the most fermentation and still capacity of any distillery. We could make over 4,500 barrels a year. Now, that is only for us to be poised for growth and to take off. Obviously, we make only a couple hundred a year currently. We originally were thinking about the contract world, but decided not to go that route, just based off the market. The contract market is so cutthroat right now, and we're not looking to do that. So, we just still doesn't cost us any money if we don't have it on. We started distilling, last year, and we'll start distilling again this year in September, October, making Maryland and Monongahela Ryes. And our column is a 15-inch column, 35-foot tall.
Now, a question for you, and a lot of people will look this up and dig a little bit, but I think there's no hiding that you guys started out contract distilling with your good buddy, you named him Pete, down there in Statesville. I just did a show with him, and that's how we kind of connected, was through Pete. And you were like, hit me up and said, "Hey man, I got to take this ride with you, Big Chief." And I was like, let's do it. Especially with people that have a passion for whiskey. Once I started looking you up and seeing what you were about it, because you are a peer student of distilling, it seems to me.
Absolutely.
You wanted to learn about it. You want to be innovative too. So is this a sweet mash or a sour mash for our listeners?
It's always a sweet mash. And, working with Pete was one of the biggest blessings I could have ever done. There are many ways to start with spirit production. You can either start distilling and wait 4 years before you make any cash, and just sell your moonshine, which that market is flooded.
Mm-hmm.
B, you can buy MGP for $400 a barrel and, maybe add some to it or shake it up or, pretend that it's yours, which is not authentic. Or C, you could beg Pete to allow you to drive 5 tractor trailers of Pennsylvania Monongahela Rye down to his distillery and him teach you how to run a column still that you just purchased. And that's what he did, because he's such an awesome dude. And so, obviously, it wasn't free.
Nothing's free in life.
Do you know any other contract distiller, any distiller that would allow you to produce over 200 barrels? I mean, he's amazing. And so
for the right amount of money, anybody will.
Yeah, exactly. No one else would do this. I contacted because I had to be authentic, and some people still poo-poo it because it wasn't distilled here. I distilled it with Pete. I drove the grain down there. Well, I had to hire the truckers. I'm not a trucker. I don't have a CDL. We grew it. We contracted the farmers. We drove it down there. I worked with Pete's staff. I, figured out what proof we wanted to take it off the still, everything, what proof we wanted to barrel, which barrels, everything, right? Obviously with their leadership, because I've just been studying it and tinkering through then, and obviously the spirit just came out wonderful, and we're now duplicating everything here, so we will not have any flavor jump or any changes to our distillate. And we have 1.5-year-old whiskey here now that is exactly the same. So
what I say to people that are naysayers of that, I say shame on you. The big distillers have done that before. They've contract distilled. Whenever Heaven Hill had their fire, where do you think they got their whiskey from? They went and sourced it from other distillers.
Yeah, but this is beyond sourcing. I drove down there with Pete and made it.
Well, the difference is you're a contract distiller, so you didn't have the kitchen to cook your whiskey yet, and that's the way I always put it. If I'm gonna have a food truck and a city says you have to have a commercial kitchen, I'm gonna go use somebody else's kitchen because my kitchen is not approved. Correct. So you went and found yourself a big ass kitchen, cooked yourself some whiskey max, and hey, I think you did a fine job of it. I just wanted to point those out there that you were not trying to hide anything. You put the label on there in the right way and let people know what's what,
Right.
And contract distilling, like you said, you laid out the ways to keep those lights on and stuff. Waiting 4 years for some whiskey to age, not making vodka, not making moonshine,
right.
Which both those markets, like you said, are flooded. The world's largest distillery that makes the most spirits, the most visited distillery, Old Smoky. I hate to tell people they've cornered the market.
Don't get in it. Don't get in the moonshine market.
You guys do have some moonshine though, but it's a little different.
We do.
So
it's an ancillary product that it's fun. And, that it comes off our still, and we can put it in a bottle for not much money, and we can make some flavors when people are looking for something like that. And it's fun to hand around deer camps and stuff like that because it's our posted brand, and it's just a fun nod to our sportsman roots.
So you went out yesterday to put up new deer blinds, new deer stands. People call them all kinds of different things, the deer camp and stuff. That's what I was doing yesterday. It was mowing hunting lanes and stuff.
Yeah.
Did you take some of this out there to share with some of those guys after that hard day's worth of work?
We did the posted, the what we call the spiced maple, which is our cinnamon type of whiskey. We may or may not had that while we're on the side-by-sides.
Well, you're out in the woods. You can't hurt nobody out there.
No. It's just a little hair of the dog, if you will.
Yeah. Well, listeners, we're right up against our first half. I'm getting so much history in there and some knowledge for you guys from Max. And when we come back for the second half, we're going to dig into this cast strength. And I'm pretty damn excited about it because I've heard so many people say so many good things about it. So stick with us and we'll be right back. Seldom Seen Farm, bringing bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup goodness from everything from pancakes to whiskey cocktails. Seldom Seen Farm in Northern Ohio has something magical for your whiskey cocktails instead of that old basic simple syrup. Kevin Holy and his family are harvesting the sap from over their 5,000 maple trees and turning it into something delicious, maple syrup. He then goes a step further by aging in bourbon barrels for 6 to 9 months. That's right, bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup. Shh, don't tell Miss Viv, but I love to pour it over my buttered pecan ice cream. Visit them at seldomseenmaple.com. All right, listeners, we're back for the second half, and I got Maximilian Merrill with me with his beautiful dog there, a hunter, I'm imagining there. What kind of dog is that?
This is Whiskey, actually.
Whiskey, what a perfect name.
He is a hunter, though. He is a hunter. He's a poodle pointer.
A poodle pointer. He don't look like a poodle. I would imagine he's like a Welsh wolfhound or something.
Okay, I'm back. He just ripped my ears out. Yeah, I have whiskey and rye. Those are my two poodle pointers that we go pheasant hunting, usually before work.
Now, I poured some of this 118.8 proof right here. This is the straight rye whiskey cast strength. I'm imagining, now this one has a different label on it. Tell me, why did you change the label instead of the script on there?
So most of our brands have a patch on them. And, you know, the patch is historical from the Ponfeigh hunting cabin. We had that patch for about 30 years, and we use that to make our swag every year, or for people who are hunting on our property to make sure they have that as an emblem to, you know, demarcate that they're part of the hunting club. We have over 45 members of our hunting club. And when I would go out to these different conferences and stuff, and, you know, I'm thinking about starting this brand and reestablishing Monongahela Rye, I would ask the bottle manufacturers, hey, we have this patch, here's one right here, that we use for our hunting cabin. I'd like to put it on the bottle like you do those, you know, emblems and stuff like that, those medallions. They all told me no. So I got it done. Don't tell me no.
Don't tell you no.
Don't ever tell me no. Don't ever tell me no.
That's
I'll
like telling a chief in the Coast Guard and a Texan, hey, you'll never do this.
Yeah, I was a lobbyist for 14 years, mostly federal, some state. And I've been to 31 states. Don't tell me no. I'll just figure out a way to get it done. And that's what you learn. And that's why I've, you know, been blessed to be a successful entrepreneur, because it's all about there's a wall, and you got to figure out a way around it, under it, or over it.
Yeah, I gotta say, I really love it. When I opened the package and I was like, wow, that's something nobody I've seen do that before.
No, it's patent, and it is a trademark. Also, when you kill the bottle, it comes off and goes to the person at the bar that killed the bottle.
Well, I'm going to kill the bottle at the hunting camp, and then we're going to put this in Southeast Texas at the Doty Hunting Club here in Southeast Texas.
Sounds good.
And I'm going to share this with, there's 20 hunters out there at this hunting club that I'm on, and we're definitely going to drink this whiskey out there with them. Man, Fred, if you're watching, if you're listening, I got to say you were right on this right here. This thing... It's insane. A flavor bomb here.
It's a flavor bomb. It's the maple notes off the top, maple and honey notes. Obviously, the oak is in the back. It goes on the roof of your mouth. It opens up your eyes, and it opens up your world. Like, how is a rye that good? I mean, it is super sweet.
So sticky on the mid palate that gives it this long-lasting finish. I love to drink orange spice tea in the wintertime with some honey.
Put that with it.
This right here, it could match that. And I probably put too much honey sometimes, and it's just got that sticky sweets coated my mouth, and I'm falling in love. I'm a weeded bourbon guy.
I am too. Don't get me wrong. I am too. I'm a Weller boy.
Man, I tell you what, this is set on your front porch after a great steak dinner or after a hunt and eating some
smoking a cigar.
And just, this is dessert right here in a glass. Perfect for me. You don't need no ice for this. On a cool fall night, this is where it's at right here. I think, and just a right amount of spice in there, almost like a little hot honey. You know, that's something beautiful that you can get in a whiskey, and you got to respect this type of rye over that Kentucky style rye everybody's drinking. Maryland style, German style, Monongahela rye, whatever you want to call it. I call it delicious, is what I call it. I call this is perfect. I would call this the hunter's delight. I love that.
I'll take it.
You got that hunter green to me in your label, in your logo. You got I'm assuming those are the Appalachian Mountains in there and stuff.
You got it. Nice.
And you actually have a piece of rye folded around it as part of the F. I don't think a lot of people would realize that.
And the infinity symbol.
Oh, I didn't notice that. This bottle's going to go on forever.
These traditions are going to go on forever. Our favorite motto is, our favorite spirit is the spirit of traditions, and all of our traditions that happened at the Ponfeigh Hunting Cabin are into this brand as well.
And when I opened the package, there was extra bottles in the package. 2 extra bottles, folks. There's a bottle of the 90 proof and a bottle of the cast strength with some writing on here. I'm assuming that's your signature, Max. And for those hunters out there, there was this beautiful thing right here. I love it. Hunter Orange.
Yeah.
And then for that too, you sent a T-shirt. And we're going to give those away at the end of this show.
Good. Good.
I think this is delicious. So where do you create anything besides, or is your plans to create anything besides a rye? Or are you going to make a bourbon up there? Or are you going to make an American single malt, something different than just the 95.5 rye?
That's a good question. So we laid down just shy of 50 barrels of Maryland style rye that we sort of touched on. We grew some corn on the Ponfeigh farms, and we did a 60-30-10, 60% rye, 30% corn, and 10% malted barley. That's aging quite nicely. So we are looking forward to that nod to our heritage of our brethren more east and more south of this region, because of our soils were so thin and not as fertile. Corn wasn't a major agricultural product as it was in other parts of the nation, and most people don't really realize that before modern agriculture, the whole country wasn't producing a ton of corn. It's a very intensive crop. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of nutrients to grow corn. And fortunately, we've been blessed with modern fertilizers, potash and lime, and now we can grow it basically anywhere. Like you said, we do 2 different styles of moonshine, and we'll have a third. We do the maple spice shine, which is our answer to the cinnamon whiskey craze, and it's deliciously smooth. We do our rye shine, which is 120 proof in a little posted bottle. I may have sent you one.
A little sample I'm saving there.
Oh yeah, that's and then we're also doing a jalapeno shine as well, and that'll be it. And that'll be a little package that we give with that orange hat that to take to deer camp or your favorite hunter. But as far as bourbons, we're going to stick to our rye roots here. We're going to pound the pavement and pound the history that Somerset County, Westmoreland County, Fayette County, was the birthplace of American rye spirits, and we're going to keep to those traditions. Would I love to make a single malt? Yeah, I would, and I probably will in the near future, just as funsies. But our premium products and being a premium brand, we will stick to the rye, over 51% rye, no matter what. And we do make a gin and we do make a rum. Both of those products are aged in our rye barrels, and they're aged for 6 months in our rye barrels to bring that rye history into those products as well. They're delicious products. They're delicious spirits. Our London Dry gin is what I like to call a gateway gin. It is very juniper minimal with that rye spice in there. Blows up cocktails. People are loving it. And our rum is very similar to that. We age it in our rye barrels to bring all that rye spice, out of the wood. And we age it in with Amburana oak, and it basically tastes like Christmas. It is an experiment that our production manager Brendan Rawlings was helping me with, and we just came out with an excellent product. So those are the 5 to 6 major products that we're going to stick to, and we're just going to hit every bar and restaurant and hit every state store that we can to spread the word.
Well, I always say that, and I know listeners have heard this before. Win your backyard, win your city, and then win your state. And if you can do those, then you can look at the rest of the United States before you take on those monster markets like Texas, like New York, like California, like Florida. People that will drink you dry overnight, and you might have that flame, but it will flicker out if you don't win your own market first.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
Marketing 101 from Big Chief. You got your class today,
Very
distillers.
Very true. It's
Just-
so much easier.
Yeah,
So much easier to win your backyard than to try to experience. You're just going to burn out. You're not wrong. And Pete Barger, who is an advisor to our board, just stresses that every time we're on. He goes, "How many bars and restaurants did you talk to this week? How many more state stores did you get in?" He's always just like boom, boom, boom. And we have an easier system than North Carolina. So, Pennsylvania is the largest whiskey purchaser in the entire union. So, it's a blessing to be here where it all started.
The thing I always think about when I go and visit a state, and I'll go to visit a distillery, is when I go to a restaurant and I don't see that distillery's whiskey up there. That makes me wonder, and I'm like, that's a fail for me, because I want to be able to see that they've tried to win that market and stuff. And then when I do go to a place and I go to a restaurant and that's the first thing I see, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we've been there, we love them, we try to help them out." That's the best marketing you can get whenever you have somebody that's going to push your product at their steakhouse, at their restaurant, and make cocktails with your stuff and serve it neat. There's no better marketing than that right there in helping you win that market.
Absolutely. It is a tough game, though. It is a very tough game. Anybody who's listening to you and thinking about getting in the market, talk to 20 different distilleries and distillers and founders before you think about getting into it, because it will take every ounce of energy you have to build a brand. It is 24/7 for following every lead, going to every festival, going to every tasting. It is. I left the cushy lobbying world to do this, and sometimes I look in the mirror and I shake my head, and I'm like, "What did you do?" What did you do? And obviously, I'm so much more passionate about, bringing our history back to Somerset County, and I'd always wanted to do something for this area that, lost all the industrial and manufacturing jobs, and, this is my chance to do it.
Well, hey, hats off to you being an American and living that American dream and actually building something. You've built a brand that can be respected, that can be honored in the past while rebuilding the future of Pennsylvania, of Somerset County.
Correct.
And you're giving something out that not only helps farmers, but it helps local people enjoy something local. There's a lost art in that in America right now, to where it's so easy to push a button and get something delivered to your house from Amazon, from Walmart, wherever you buy your stuff from, Target, whatever. It's too easy. And if more listeners would go to people like Max and buy their whiskey and support small business, yes, craft distilleries are small business, we'd be doing a lot better as Americans, helping our fellow man and woman out, achieve that American dream. And I know you would love that, wouldn't you, Max?
Absolutely. And if you go to ponfeighdistillery.com, regardless, it could come to your front door. So, but please visit us. That is obviously what you're stating is way more important.
Well, let's talk about the distillery itself and visiting, and what does a person that's doing the distillery trail, the Pennsylvania distillery trail, when they're visiting there and stuff. There's in that region, in that western Pennsylvania region, there's several distilleries there. If they're going to come visit you, what do they get to do while they're there?
Well, we have a full tasting room that you can see in the background, and then you can see the production facility right there in the background too. We have a full, wonderful cocktail menu. Manhattans and Old Fashions are our #1 sellers because of the cask strength. That's what it makes a beautiful Manhattan or Old Fashioned. It just blows them up. And, we have indoor, outdoor space. You can purchase a cigar and smoke outside. We prefer you not to smoke inside near 100,000 gallons of ethanol. But we have food trucks on the weekends, and we have music, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's just a fun atmosphere for the whole family. And then, during Saturdays, we give tours of the production facility, and like we've been talking about all day, is that we focus on the history. We discuss why it happened, what the Whiskey Rebellion was, and why whiskey production was so prevalent here, and what we lost due to Prohibition. And pick up a few bottles on your way out, and you have a lovely experience. And we're not afraid to point to the other breweries or distilleries that are in the neighboring area.
I love that brotherhood of distilling, that community that we all have in this whiskey community that we live in, that they really do. I can't say it enough, listeners. I watch distillers work together and help each other out. I pointed out Heaven Hill a while ago that they had sourced some whiskey, but they were in some tough times. And their brothers and sisters there in Kentucky came to their aid and stuff. And where do we learn that from? We learn it from Scotland. We learn it from Ireland, where they keep 10% of their distillation at other distilleries to help each other out and stuff, just in case they do have an accident. But I love that you point out.
That's a good idea. Remember, I need to remember that.
Yeah. That way you do have that whiskey. And I know you got some brothers and sisters there in Pennsylvania.
I do.
They might be hip to that.
I know they would be hip to that. They might charge me for it, but they'd be hip to that.
Well, if you store theirs, then maybe there's a little.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Sharing it out. Well, let's talk about these 2 giveaways real fast, because I want to do 2 giveaways, listeners, and this is what I want to do. I want you to do. So the post on Tuesday, what I want you to do I'm going to do 2 giveaways here. I'm going to split these 2 bottles and this hat and this shirt. And what we're going to do on YouTube, I want you to like, subscribe, and comment on the post. I want you to comment your favorite rye whiskey. And if you haven't had a rye whiskey you'd like to try, let's do that. And I want to make sure that you follow Ponfeigh on all social media, on Instagram and on Facebook. The other bottle is going to be over on Facebook. Now, what I want to do for that, I'm going to put the knitted cap with that cask strength on the post, on the whiskey trip. I want you to make sure you, like I said, follow Ponfeigh on Facebook. Nice giveaway. But on the comments, I want you to post a photo of you hunting, of your hunting trophy on there.
Good idea.
And I want to see the hunters out there comment, post a photo of you hunting. I even take fishing. I want to see some outdoorsmen, outdoor women, whatever, and we're going to give that away to somebody at the end of the week. Let me look at the date here.
Can I give a bonus point there? Can I add a bonus point, Big
Yeah.
Chief? And if they're with their son or daughter, they get bonus points.
Let's do that.
About passing on the traditions.
That is so true, man. Mm-hmm. I love it. My wife a couple years ago asked me to teach a young lady, a nurse that worked with her, to hunt. And at first I was hesitant, but it was so rewarding to me to help that. And I've taken both of my kids, my daughter and my son, hunting and stuff. And there's nothing better than doing that. So the date on this is going to be June 9th. That's on Monday evening at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. You got to be 21 and you got to reside in the United States. So that's the rules. So those bonus points for that deal. And if you get bonus points for the YouTube channel, if you post a photo over on the Facebook comment too, and then those bonus points of having your child in there, taking them hunting, man, what a giveaway. 2 bottles, 2 people, you get a cap and a shirt. I think that's an amazing giveaway. It helps build all of our social media up and stuff. I want to make sure that you go and follow Ponfeigh to see what they're doing out there what they got. They always have events going on. I want you to, if you're in that Pennsylvania, Somerset, Pennsylvania area, I want you to go visit them. And I want you, if you see Max there, go up to him and say, hey, I got to watch you and Big Chief have a great conversation, and that's the reason I came here. I'm sure he would love to hear that. I'm sure that he would love for you to purchase some whiskey there and maybe even have a cocktail with you or a pour of whiskey. I'm sure he would do that for you. So, Max, I think what a great giveaway. I appreciate you so much taking this ride on a whiskey trip, sending me full bottles of whiskey to share at my hunting camp with my fellow hunters and stuff. I can't say enough of how grateful I am to help me keep this going and giving back to the whiskey community. I always say, give more than you take, listeners. And I'm very fortunate that distilleries like Ponfeigh send me whiskey, and I want to share out there with what I get. So, and I got some skin in the game too. Next week I have a episode, and I'm going to dig into my shelves and pull out one of my bottles, and I'll be giving that away. So look for that giveaway. Actually, right after we finish recording, I'm going to go record a video to give away another bottle of whiskey. So you just keep watching, keep listening, and we'll keep having great guests like Max on. Max, any last words? Where can listeners find you guys at on social media? Because I know now they're looking.
Well, last words, I would just like to reinstate what you said. The reason why I jumped in full feet after studying 25 years and meeting folks like Corky or Pete is that this industry is full of wonderful people. And there is not one person I haven't met, including yourself, that hasn't been wonderful, opening, and helpful for every chance and every problem, every decision, every, John Hargrove from the Whiskey House, Pete Barger, like I said, Corky, Bill from Maker's Mark. It is such a wonderful community. So, feel free to, when you come to Ponfeigh, ask me anything. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you what to do, and I'll especially tell you what not to do, because I made a lot of mistakes, and all those individuals I talked to did too and shared that with me as well. What was the last question I was supposed to answer?
Where can listeners find you on social media?
So absolutely, PonfeighDistillery.com, on Instagram, Ponfeigh, and Facebook, Ponfeigh Distillery. And we look forward to having you here. I'm here a lot of times. Sometimes I'm off-site, and look forward to giving you a tour and sharing our traditions and our mission to bring back Monongahela Rye.
I love it. I love it. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on here, taking this ride. Listeners, you know where you can find old Big Chief. You can find me at The Whiskey Trip on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and now on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button up in the corner there. Make sure you like our post and comments. Comments help us out. It gets us in the algorithm and stuff. I'd appreciate it if you'd give old Matt and Mark a listen over on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, from The Bourbon Life. Give them a listen. If you like what you're hearing, give us a 5-star review and write some comments. It's super easy and stuff. Those 5-star comments, those reviews, it helps open up doors to distilleries like Ponfeigh. It gets great guests on my show, like Maximilian Merrill here from Ponfeigh. It gets great whiskey in my hand to drink, folks, and I really love that. But once you're done with that, take those comments, post them back over on my Facebook page. My goal by the end of the year is to get 100 comments, 100 reviews on there. I'm at 63 right now, so 65, somewhere in there. It's growing every day, and that's my goal. I had a bunch of goals for 2025. That's one of them. One of my goals was start a YouTube channel and to get to 150 subscribers. And I'm already almost there. So,
Yeah.
Goals are what it's all about, building a great community of listeners that like to just listen to a guy. I don't take myself serious. I'm just a bourbon bullshitter. I'm just a guy talking about whiskey. And like I say, I like to bring you the rest of the story, or like I like to say, the rest of the dram. And I think I'm doing that, bringing the story of this guy right here, Max, out there to the world. He's been on other shows. Whiskey Lore was one of them. If you listen to this, you want to learn even more, I implore you, go check out Whiskey Lore. Check out other shows he's been on. I know he'd appreciate it. And the other thing on Facebook, I'd love for you to go, once you get some of his whiskey in your hands, go to Ponfeigh Distillery on Facebook and write them a review. They need it just as much as I need it. I'm sure that Max would appreciate that. He's spreading the love about his distillery out there. Other than that, don't forget to give away 2 bottles on YouTube. One's for comments, like and subscribe, and then over on Facebook under the comments, make sure you post a photo of you hunting. Bonus for having your kid in it. You got to be 21. You got to reside in the United States. On June 9th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will announce that. Listeners, you know how much I love you. Keep hanging with me. I'm going to keep bringing you great shows. This is Old Big Chief, and thanks for taking this ride with me.